Hey, what's going on? E. Jones, bottom to the top hoops.
Your boy, Black Elvis, we are in the building.
Yo, so excited to be able to bring you another episode of Bottom to the Top Hoops. I want to thank all of the subscribers. We have now hit 18,000 on YouTube, which is monumental. Before we get into thanking the sponsors, I want to make sure that everybody checks out those other podcasts on BCOM TV, which are off the grid. And you got the Decision series coming back soon. L, how you feeling, man? Who we shouting out on the sponsor side?
Well, first things first, how you feeling on this Monday morning?
I'm feeling good, man. It was a good weekend. Got some good training in. You know, the weather wasn't too crazy. I feel like it's warming up. The pandemic numbers are going down, man. We're starting to being able to play some basketball and have people attend games. So I'm always excited about that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, man, who we shouting out on the sponsor side, Al?
Shout out to T-Mobile. You know, they've been there from day one. Love to say that because they took a chance on us. So shout out to T-Mobile. So y'all make sure y'all go check out some of their local plans.
Yes, sir. Definitely want to check out Fine Food Cuisine. Best takeout in the Bronx, Chef Al, my man Slice. They did a great job with the clothing drive. Make sure y'all go check them out, man. The food is amazing. You know, we patronize them every week. You know, I know they we regulars now. They know what to order when we step in the building.
Absolutely.
So it's love over there, man. Who else we shouting out, L?
Shout out to Harlem Wizards, man.
Yes, sir. The WizFit Challenge. If you guys are looking for fundraisers, you know, it's happening in the virtual space now. Definitely something you want to check out. Go to WizFit Challenge at harlemwizards.com. L, man, I think we should jump right into the topic, bro.
Absolutely.
So, as you all know, New York City, or some of you who don't know, who are from outside of New York City, are unaware of the culture and the climate and the recent loss that we took. One of the most important and impactful people in the history of New York City basketball passed away a little less than a month ago. Mr. Tom Kaczowski, the president of the HSBI report, which is a high school basketball scouting service, passed away from a battle with cancer. And our condolences go to the family and all of the friends and loved ones who was impacted by his tragic loss. And, you know, it was our thought that, you know, while we mourn in death, it's always great to celebrate life. And
absolutely.
We wanted to take the time to dedicate this show to the memory of Tom Kaczowski and also talk back about the interview that we did with Tom, which we believe is the last interview that he's done before his passing. And he had some, you know, just some nuggets that I think will last forever in the history of the game in terms of scouting, his knowledge of the subject, and you know, his impact on the game. So first thought about Tom Kaczowski, I'm gonna ask you a two-part question. First thought about Tom Kaczowski that you remember from being a student athlete, and the second was, you know, what was your takeaway after we did the interview with Tom?
Well, first things first, that first question, it was just, Tom was just such a stand-up guy, man. He taught you how to be a man. He looked you in your eye, he shook your hand, he addressed you by your name, you know, always had a kind word to say or a kind gesture. You know, like I said, stand-up dude, man. And as far as the interview we did, you know, I thought it was one of the most informative interviews we've ever done as far as just breaking down detail of what to look for, what do scouts look for, what did he look for as far as when he wanted to promote scouts to college coaches or to other recruiters. I mean, it was just so informative, man.
Yeah, for sure. That was well said, El. And I'm just going to piggyback on one of the things you said. You know, when you say a kind word or a kind gesture and remembering your name, Tom made you feel important.
Absolutely.
If he knew your name, you felt validated.
Yeah, you thought you was like doing something.
You was going, and you were.
Mm-hmm.
And you were, because his word meant something, and he's, you know, helped and you know, recommended a lot of players to get to college basketball, and sometimes people that were on the cusp. And if he gave that stamp, a college coach, and I think they were all his friends, would take that chance based on Tom's recommendation. So it behooved you to be in his good graces.
No doubt.
I'm going to take a dive into the actual interview. One of the things that I remember about Tom, which was funny, was if you go back to the interview and for the people who go back and watch it, and we strongly recommend that you watch the interview so you can have context on this conversation. Tom was a gentleman, and he was very courteous, but he's strong in his thoughts and his views. And you could see the back and forth where Tom needs to get his thought conveyed. And I would interrupt, as an interviewer, I'm trying to control the interview and making sure that, I'm servicing the viewer. Tom has a job to get information out, right? So if I'm going to provide you with my time and my expertise, it's going to happen, my way, kind of, right? So I would make comments, and one in specific, he mentioned Riverside Church, and I mentioned the Gauchos.
I remember that.
And he was quick to say there was 48 kids who were sponsored in 1 year by Riverside. And I was like, and the Gauchos too. He was like, yeah, not as many.
Yeah.
And then, and in true Tom form, just kept on in the conversation.
Absolutely, he did.
So that was something where I was like, wow, like, you know what I mean? And on 3 different occasions, if I cut him off of my thought, if I cut him off in his thought, he went back to the thought. He answered my question, and then said, anyway, like later for that.
Yeah.
Like I was saying. Let me get to the important stuff. But I knew he meant well, and I can call him a friend. Just as an aside, he would call me every single year, at least once. And when he would call me, it would be around the holiday season. He called me for 2 things. He would always ask me about my family and wish me season's greetings. And he would ask me about the City Legends tournament, who's in it, what's the matchups. He would give me his feedback. Oh, that's a good one. Oh yeah, and he would never let it go. Like one year we had a big matchup between St. Raymond's and Emotep out of Philly. And he's like, oh, Isaiah Washington, top 100. Oh, Fats Russell, he's going to Rhode Island. That's a good one. He said, you'll get a big crowd for that. Made me feel good because I felt like, oh, Tom is stamping. Okay, I guess we're going to get a big crowd. So that was some cool stuff about the interview. So with regards to any detail, L, that you can remember about, you're behind the camera and you're listening to him and we're both being educated. But is there one thing that he shared that stood out to you, maybe that you didn't know or that he expounded on that you was like, wow, you had an aha moment?
I kind of did when he spoke about conditioning.
Okay.
You remember that part?
I do.
A lot of our kids, once they are at a certain skill level, they don't understand the fact that they really have to be in shape.
Yes.
And I don't know how he said it, but he said fatigue is like your biggest enemy when it comes to playing ball.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't remember. And for all you viewers, please go check out that Tom Kaczowski interview, exclusive.
Yeah.
One thing I have to mention about Tom, is Tom, for the most part, rode dolo. Tom, in his prime was a mid-aged white guy. But you'd find him in the slums. You'd find him in the hoods of the hoods with his pad and his pen, and he's greeting all of the nicest kids in the gym. It was like this dude had a hood past, bro.
Everywhere, L. That
Brooklyn,
wasn't just
Queens.
It wasn't just New York, though.
Mm-mm.
He was going to games in Citywide. He was going to games in Soul in the Hole. Like, Tom was a New Yorker.
Yes.
And you know what's crazy? I've never seen Tom accompanied by anyone.
That's what I said, yo. It's always Dolo.
That's crazy.
But that's because Tom was an eagle.
Yeah.
He was different, man. He was different. Just who he was, his makeup. You know, like all of the kids that he was responsible for co-signing to go to the major Division I schools, man, it's unbelievable.
I'm gonna tell you what I remember about Tom, just from my playing days. I don't know if he had a contract with Polo, but he always
the polo shirt.
He always had the short sleeve polo shirt with the collar and the khakis. He was in like a CHSAA spring dress code attire at all times. And he had the Rockports on, the comfortable joints. And obviously, you know, Tom was super tall. I don't know, Tom was probably 6'8", right?
Yeah, he was about 6'7", 6'8".
And then the two other things that I remember is Tom refused to conform. He never got a cell phone. If you need to reach me, call me on my house phone, leave a message. And he never drove. He got everywhere and he never drove, which was amazing to me. You know, as I look back on Tom's legacy and all that he did for the game, I guess it's just apropos to say thank you. Thank you for the sacrifice. Thank you for the many student athletes and students in general, right? Because I'm sure in his teaching years of 10 years, he helped more than just athletes. Thank you for the selfless service. Thank you for just being available, right? They say the best ability is availability. And Tom was always available. Thank you for taking the time to speak to people that I'm pretty sure he didn't always want to speak to, but he always made him a moment to speak to coaches, parents, you know, students, and he was always available. He was always available for those conversations. And lastly, I guess I'm going to say thank you for allowing me to be a friend and for him to be a trusted resource to get valuable information and also grant us that interview and for us to walk away and say, you know what, the great Tom Kaczowski blessed our platform. And if you can remember, after that interview, you and I had a conversation like, man, this one is going to do well.
Yep.
And it almost like it set the stage for who we were going to be in terms of providing informative content that would drive what we do now.
Yes. Well, let's think about it. After we got Tom, we got Tiny Morton.
Yep.
Then we went to All-Star Weekend.
Yep.
So those were the interviews that people were basing our show off of. So it was very easy to get Tiny Archibald. It was very easy to get the Howards. You know what I mean? Because it made sense.
Credibility.
Yeah. I'll tell you one good story I remember about Tom that I feel probably could have changed my life. And I didn't understand the value of his words as a kid.
Okay.
But my senior year in King, we played against Manhattan Center for seeding. It was probably one of my biggest games in high school. Tom was there.
Okay.
Basically, I think I scored 21 points in the second half. We bumped Manhattan Center off, which put us in the #1 seed. So we didn't have to face Steph till we got to the Garden.
Got it.
After the game, Tom walks over to me and says, Elvis Blount, great game. So is it true you're going to San Jack? I looked at him like, no. So apparently he's been speaking to Mr. Lloyd's because that was the school Mr. Lloyd's wanted me to go to because he said I needed to become a point guard. Look at that. The man told me, but look at me, like the typical kid. What's up with the girls in there? What's up with this? It's in Texas. I ain't trying to go to Texas and wind up going to Texas anyway. But I just wanted to bring that up, E, because he was so on point, man. Like, you know, when he said things about kids, this man was never far off.
No, man. He studied his business, and, you know, I would love for someone to be able to just maybe share some notes that he wrote about Kenny Anderson when he was 14, or what was his evaluation of Alonzo Mourning in high school? Like, what was his thoughts the first time he saw Chris Jackson, right? I would love to just be able to just look at those notes and see that, or go back to HSBI report and see what he said about, because, you know, the one thing people didn't know, Tom was a creative writer.
Yeah.
And if you ever read the stuff that he did, he used to write for the, I don't know if you remember the Big East magazine.
No, I don't.
They used to have a magazine that used to come out, and they do preseason rankings, and Tom would write stuff for them. And it would just be so, like, he would describe things like in players and situations, and he would compare it to, like, you know, he flies through the air like Superman, and, you know, he dishes like Julia Childs. And it was like, you know, he just brought a whole different air to how he covered the game. And if you remember also, they had Tom on weekly on MSG.
I do remember that, MSG Varsity.
Him and Mike Quick. And they used to do that show when they talked about high school basketball. And that was a great back and forth. And, you know, one of the greatest compliments that I've heard is, man, we lost the great Tom Kaczowski, but people actually came to me and said, hey, that's a role that you could fill, meaning me. And I'm like, didn't see myself in that space in a million years.
But Tom kind of said that when we interviewed him off the screen. He said, what you guys are doing is awesome. Eric, I love how you do your research. It reminds me of me. You know, these seeds were planted, man. Yeah,
it's very humbling, man. And you know, it's even bringing that up right now. It just it's there's a huge responsibility with what he did, how he did it. So, you know, we're going to continue to do what we do in terms of providing information and trying to help kids and working to help kids. And I don't necessarily like to use the word try, but working to help kids and continue to give information. And if it so happens that the good Lord puts either one of us in a position or a place to be that voice, you know, I welcome it, and we'll work to be diligent and thorough to just continue to with that level of professionalism and continue on with that legacy. So big shout out to Tom Kaczowski, the HSBI report, his mentor, Howie Garfinkel, and all that you did for the game of basketball in New York City. Many tributes have gone. I thought it was so beautiful that all of the local teams, the Knicks, the Nets, the NBA, they just really, really celebrated him. And I think that was important. And it was
just due, though. It was just due.
Yeah. So I'll give you the last word, Al, in your parting memories about the great Tom Kaczowski.
I don't think there'll be another Tom. You know, I mean, just his legacy, what he stood for, his integrity as a man, you know, just for him, how he made everyone feel important. You know, I try to take a page out of that book because that gets you further. It's almost like you get further with honey than vinegar, you know. And
Grandma told me that, Al.
Yeah, you know, so I just want to say God bless his soul, and want to thank him so much, man, for just holding New York up, holding New York basketball up. Because one thing we had, even when New York fell off, people knew to call Tom to find out who was still hot in New York.
That's a fact. So in closing, check this out, man. This is about Tom Kaczowski. So if you can learn something from his life and his legacy, love on people, Always stay positive. Be willing to listen. Understand that it's bigger than you. Service is important. And at the end of the day, if you lead with love, it'll put you in a good place. Big shout out to the team, D Jones, Jerry Ice. Make sure you check us out, BCOM TV, Spotify, YouTube, Apple TV. Appreciate all the subscribers. Shout them out, El.
Big shout out to the cast of Decisions. We getting closer and closer to dropping that. Shout out to my boy Grid, doing great things. We just had a great interview. Please go check out that last interview with the Iona Prep coach. It was a great interview. It was very informative. Shout out to Sap. But shout out to number one person. You already know, man upstairs.